But instead there's a 10-second commercial, someone goes on and says, you have not returned your letter that entitles you to a free card. End of commercial. In other words, they're spending mass TV time to reach a very tightly targeted audience that they've done this letter to in as personal a way as they can. Get the message. These are folks, I hate to say this, but they have a lot more money to do research and other things than you do. And this is what they're all concluding. At Chrysler, every manager, everybody manager title or above, 150,000 people, are expected to make 10 personal phone calls a month to a Chrysler owner somewhere in the world. So, you know, the phone rings and it's Lee. Hey, this is Lee, baby. How do you like your Dodge? Well, think about that. What's going on here? And the question is, how can we get that built into your system? Well, fortunately, with all this happening, there are some methods. So let me just talk a little bit about how some of these methods work. The first thing is you got to know who your opinion leaders are. Who are the opinion leaders in your community? Because remember, I know you still don't like to think about being a utility, but damn it, I've been saying this at cable meetings for 10 years, you are. And now the evidence is there, and you're going to be regulated just like them, and in most states, I think you're going to be running to the State House begging to be regulated just like them. Because bad as PUCs are, they are not as bad as local regulating authorities. Okay? And I've dealt with them for almost all the 45 years I've been practicing. Are they a bunch of dingbats? Often. Often regulators have a certain characteristic that sometimes fits that designation. But at least it's a system that tends to work. Nonetheless, whether you like it or not, the local element is always going to be a part of what you do. And for those states where you remain locally, and for this period of time when you remain locally regulated and locally franchised, you know that the key is who in that community supports you. You see, if you work on the idea that you can sell the local regulating authority, the local licensing authority, you're back in the 40s and the 50s where working with Congress, we'll go out in the smoke-filled rooms and we'll cut a deal. See, and it'll just be us and them, and the public won't care. The public won't care. Why do you suppose they want all those incumbents out of there and demand change pretty regularly? Because the public does realize today that it has a voice. How do we now get ourselves into that local network of opinion leaders who shape the behavior and the attitudes of that voice so that they're on our team? Or if they won't join the team, at least they know we are good people trying to do our best, even if we humanly screw up once in a while and occasionally might make a bum decision. And I suggest to you that that simple fact is all the difference in the world. I learned this a lot in our work for school boards. We represent school boards in 37 states. To us, it's our training. Believe me, if I go to a school board meeting tomorrow night, I can make you a list of what the big issues in this country are going to be in the next 5 years. Because some mother, some parent will be there spouting off on this issue, and it may sound like it's off the wall, but you start thinking about it, and you know what's going on. Well, in those venues, the only way you can deal with that is to have the opinion leadership in the community who understands what you're doing. And that begins with making a list of exactly who those people are, getting them in your computer and tracking them. Just like Hallmark, just like Coke. And I have to tell you this. In 1984, we, our own firm, established for the baby bells in the United States an opinion leader tracking system that just won't stop. And if you're going to go head-to-head with them, you better have your own. You've got one big advantage, and I know you won't believe this, but you've got one big advantage. Your service is a hell of a lot better than theirs. And trust today goes to service, not selling. People today want to be served, not sold. You all know that. And so community relations is no longer a kind of a nice thing to do. It helps marketing, builds our goodwill. No. Many organizations feel that community relations is the guts of the business. Case in point, you remember good old Jordan Marsh here, part of the Allied Stores network, and they sold out to a Canadian developer who went belly up, and you all know Jordan's and Hundreds of other department stores across the country in that network were, and still to some extent are, in very bad situations. They were bankrupt. Business continued down. The management took a look at it and said, well, it's no wonder, because we're bankrupt, we've cut out all that old community relations stuff we used to do. And so very timidly they went into bankruptcy court. And they said, bankruptcy judge, we need $170 million. We're broke, we're bankrupt, we owe all these creditors all this money. We need $170 million to get back into the community relations business. Without blinking an eye, he banged his gavel and said, of course. Of course, he said, you can't do business without it. And the chief attorney for the creditors stood up and says, absolutely, Your Honor, no objection. Think of this. Bankrupt company, an attorney for creditors trying to collect a few $1 billion. No objection whatsoever to them taking $170 million. They could have gone to the creditors and plopping it right into community relations because it was clear. And these are not exactly what you'd call PR types. You know, the bankruptcy judge and a lawyer for the plaintiffs here, both of them could see that this was the core, that until Jordan's was seen again as our neighbor, our friend, the store that really is part of our community, but there's no way that they could compete. Well, think about that, because it seems to me that's the challenge. It's nothing less than that. Now, here's the beauty of working with opinion leaders. Most opinion leader systems, and certainly the one that the Bells have, put employees of the company, trusted, of course, trained employees, in touch with opinion leaders. Now, the two ideas that I presented start coming together. Every employee an ambassador, a political salesperson for the company, and opinion leaders that are the ones who ultimately make the decisions in our society. And now we're going to put those two ideas together with a program that lets employees be in touch on a formal basis as representatives of the company with the key opinion leaders. And just listen to what they have to say and maybe present them some new ideas, some policies we're thinking about, some changes they ought to know about, some information they don't have. And then over time building that trust so that they go out into the community and become our third-party credibility trusted spokespersons. You know, if you think about it, that's the way it's always been. We don't really go do a lot of things on our own. We think we do, but I don't know if any of you have bought a new car recently. I had that unfortunate experience recently. I say unfortunate because, you know, I mean, there's so many choices. How do you make a choice? I was close to flipping a coin, but I wasn't too sure about that either. It seemed about as risky as actually going and looking at them, you know. So well, think about buying a car, or think about any important decision. And it may not seem like it to you, but whether or not to have cable, what level of cable to have, and whether to feel that my cable company is satisfying me, well, I got to take that back. We used to talk about customer satisfaction, satisfying customers. Now we have to talk about delighting customers. We're talking about customer delight in the cutting-edge companies that we work with. A decision about cable is in that same class. There's a strong emotional tie to a decision about cable. I don't know if you've seen the research that's been done generically. Maybe you've done some of your own. Well, now think about buying a car. When you buy a car, do you just say, hey, damn it, it's Friday, I ought to have a new car. Let's just go pick one. You don't do that, do you? You think about it. You ask other people. Hey, I noticed you're driving a so-and-so. How's it run? How's the dealer? Hey, you know a lot about cars. What's good right now? Hey, I've been thinking about buying a so-and-so. What do you think? That's how we do it, isn't it? How do you vote? Oh, I know, you just make up your own mind all by yourself. Not many. Less than 2% of Americans do that on any subject, in case you're curious. And my famous example, if you're dubious, if you still think we can send a message and somehow it'll break through the clutter all by itself, and that people will receive the message and be motivated to behavior, just test me out. It's Friday night, maybe you're going out for dinner. When the menus are passed around, remember what the first words are out of somebody's mouth. We can't even order lunch, for God's sake, without saying, what are you going to have? All right, isn't it time that you and I then stepped up to the plate and talked to our GMs and to our senior management and said, look, we add value to the organization today more than we ever did. That we're the frontline troops for success or failure in this industry. Almost every other industry in America has already made that decision. And I think we have a responsibility first to make sure that the executives we work with hear this from us, that they understand it, that we put together a case, and if it means putting together a formal case, let's do it. Let's pull it. I mean, I got an office full of case studies to illustrate this. Not only that, Opinion Research Corp has got a 4-year study that they've been doing. It's kind of interesting. It arose from that feeling in the 80s. You may remember, some of you, in the 80s, when Milton Friedman and some of those Chicago economists were saying that the only thing a company had to do was make money and pay its taxes and offer a few jobs and it was okay. Forget all this, you know, helping the community and so forth. Well, ORC at the end of the 80s said, let's check this out. So they've done this rather massive study, and Friedman couldn't have been more wrong. They find, and their findings are getting stronger every year, they find that, first of all, unless a company is seen as socially responsible, as community involved, people put it on a second level to those companies that are seen, those organizations, I can't just use that word company anymore, to organizations that are seen as socially responsible. And that if you are seen as part of the community as socially responsible, as going beyond your business, not just there to make a buck, but going beyond with classroom programs and all those other things you do, if you're seen as that, two marvelous things happen that the marketers need to learn, as well as us and our managers. One is, if you're seen as socially responsible, people feel that your service will be quality. Now, there's no, again, remember, it's perception, rationality, facts have nothing to do with it, but you can see the connection. If you're taking the time to be part of the community, you're not the kind of an outfit that would offer us bad quality. Secondly, if you're seen as socially responsible, and they did have a problem with quality or some problem in your service, they believe you're the kind of company that would talk to them and would make it right. Can you imagine two sales characteristics that could be more powerful than people thinking your quality and that you're willing to talk to them and make things right? And both of those, the only thing that ORC can trace them to is this whole idea of community relations, community involvement. So I think you and I have got some work to do. First, getting our opinion leader lists, knowing who those folks are, who's that network. Secondly, getting people inside the organization that can relate to these folks so we can start building thousands of relationships. And then thirdly, making sure that everybody realizes they're an ambassador all the time. And I suggest that that won't happen without someone grabbing the bull by the horn, someone with a special interest. And I think that's you, that can train these people, that can formulate this philosophy, and that can push it through the organization. Because the folks with whom you're going to compete are doing that. But we can do it. We can do it just as well, and we can probably do it better because we're smaller. We're quicker on the ground, quicker on our feet. It's fun to talk to you because you're a young group. If this was a Bell group, I'm serious, if this was a Bell group, hell, I could tell stories out of the 50s about the Second World War. They'd all understand it. Here I have to be a little careful, you know, about Vietnam. It may be over your head. You see? Don't think that doesn't make a difference. I think it does. I think it gives you a tremendous advantage. And I think if you're willing to really step up and do these things, and remember, it begins by making sure that our managers and our management understand what's really happening in the world. And this is not something that you and I dreamed up, remember. We didn't design what's happening. We're just reacting to it. But what's happening is critical. People want personal relationships with the organizations that are important in their lives. If we truly believe cable is an important part of the new society that's emerging worldwide, and you'd have to be pretty blind, I